In the summer of 2010, on an otherwise quiet and calm Sunday afternoon near St. Petersburg, Florida, two men placed frantic emergency calls for help. One call was placed by a son, the other from his stepfather. Both men accused the other of a murder.
I just killed my wife.
With a wife and mother dead in her home and only her son and husband present, one of them had to be lying. Hi everyone, I'm Kevin and this is Just Thought Lounge. We're the true crime channel that delivers serious, well-balanced coverage of the cases that really make you think. Today we're examining the bewildering murder of Diane Kyne. This case takes us from a chaotic disturbance in front of the Kine family home in Seminole, through conflicting interviews, perplexing physical evidence, and leads us to not one, but two murder trials. Let's take a look. The city of Seminole is in Pinellas County, Florida. Only a short drive from the beach and containing a few lovely parks, it is a beautiful area and popular amongst retirees. It was here that William Kine, who goes by Bill, was living with his wife Diane and her 23-year-old son Kevin. He had met Diane in the early 2000s after he spotted Diane through the window of the nail salon that she ran with her twin sister. After using his daughter as an excuse to frequent the business, he finally worked up the courage to ask Diane out on a date. It had been a whirlwind romance. After dating for not quite 2 years, the couple married in 2002. At that time, her son Kevin was 15 years old. By 2010, young Kevin was 23 and Bill was over 60. Bill was the owner of Five Star Automotive in St. Petersburg for a time, and Diane had started a business on eBay. She had filled the bedrooms of their home with her merchandise. Diane adored animals and kept 2 Yorkshire Terriers, 2 Malteses, and a goat named Lacey, named after Lacey Peterson, the California woman who was murdered by her husband. Outwardly, the family appeared happy. 4 years after the marriage, Kevin had chosen to take his new stepfather's family name. Kevin Karakesh became Kevin Kyne. August 15th, 2010 was a Sunday. The day began relatively normally in the Kine family's quiet Seminole neighborhood. The calm of this pleasant Sunday afternoon would not last, however. At just before 3 p.m., baffled neighbors peered through their windows in shock and confusion to view young Kevin and his stepfather Bill tumble from their house and continue a physical, chaotic struggle with each other on their front lawn. Articles of clothing were being discarded on the ground as the two fought. Bill was able to get a hold of Kevin for a time, but it would not last. At one point, the two appeared to struggle while Kevin reached for his cell phone. Witnesses later recounted that the altercation seemed to go on forever, but in retrospect, the stepfather and son likely struggled for only a few minutes. Kevin managed to break free of Bill's grip. He ran 2 doors down to a neighbor's home, dressed only in his boxer shorts. Bill, also only partially dressed, returned to the house. There were 2 911 calls placed, which brought police to the home within minutes of the scuffle outside. The first call was placed by Kevin on his cell phone as he fought with Bill. The older man had managed to get Kevin into a chokehold intermittently, but not to fully restrain him.
– 911, is this a police, fire, or medical emergency?
My dad's trying to kill me. Help, please.
What's going on?
Help.
Sir, where are you at? Sir.
He's outside of my house. He's choking me. Please help.
Okay, calm down.
My mom.
Calm.
Please.
Okay, what's going on there?
Please help.
Sir, what's going on?
I can't, please.
Okay, all right. House or an apartment?
Help, please, sorry.
Kevin told the operator that he had been taking a nap when he was awoken by his stepfather and told that his mother needed to speak with him immediately. But when he approached the bedroom where his mother was lying down, her face appeared discolored. It was black and blue. He knew something was wrong, but in that moment, Bill approached him from behind. The older man managed to restrain Kevin in a chokehold, he claimed, while he struggled to break free. The altercation then overflowed onto the front lawn, and Kevin made desperate attempts to flee from his stepfather.
I was laying on the couch, and when I went into their room, he started choking me out, and I tried to wake her up as he was. I looked at her face, and her face was black.
4 minutes after Kevin placed his call accusing his stepfather of killing his mother, Bill Kine returned to the house and also phoned 911.
My son just killed my wife. Me and my wife were arguing, and he was choking her.
Where is your son?
He ran out the door. Oh, please, sir, pretty quick.
Okay, listen, we've got help on the way, but I need you to do a couple things for me, okay?
Okay.
Are you right there with her?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, I want you to check. Is she awake?
No.
Is she breathing at all?
No.
Okay, I want you to stay on the line with me, okay? I'm going to walk you through something. Do you have a defibrillator available?
No.
In Bill's version of events, he walked into the bedroom to find Kevin leaning over Diane and strangling her. Acting quickly, he placed Kevin in a chokehold and pulled him from the room. The struggle continued as Bill pursued Kevin outside. Bill said he was then overpowered by the younger man, who threw him around like a rag doll. As Kevin ran from him down the street, Bill returned to the house and called 911. He went into the kitchen to place the call. To that point, he had not paused to check on his wife or to see if she was still breathing. Bill met with police when they arrived at the house at about 3 p.m. Kevin Kine was still at the neighbors when the deputies arrived. He was located quickly. In the house, they found Diane, 49 years old, deceased in the bedroom, laying face up on her bed. An autopsy would later reveal that she had either been strangled or smothered. The EMT that first responded to the scene noted that Diane was already cold to the touch, which should indicate that she had been murdered sometime before the emergency calls were placed. There was some physical evidence collected at the scene which would prove pivotal to the investigation. First, 5 small droplets of blood were located in 2 locations in the bedroom. A few small specks on the comforter that lay on the bed, as well as on Diane's thigh. A single sandal was on the floor at the end of the bed. Its pair was found by the door. And a pair of eyeglasses were sitting next to the bed. DNA testing was also conducted in the room and swabs taken to match that of Diane, Bill, and Kevin. The 2 men were brought in by the police for questioning. Both of their stories are inconsistent, not only with each other, but with their 911 calls and the physical evidence. In both 911 recordings, the callers imply that they entered the bedroom with Diane at some point. Kevin when he claims to have approached his deceased mother, and Bill when he claims to have encountered the murder. Kevin stated clearly that he went into the room and that he had been in the process of trying to wake his mother when Bill attacked him.
So when I went into the room, he started choking me out, and I tried to wake her up.
But when questioned by police, he denied entering the room at all, claiming instead that he only paused at the doorway before Bill came up behind him. Bill was interviewed on 3 separate occasions. In the first 2 instances, he also denied entering the room after the encounter with Kevin. But on his 911 call, he very clearly sounded as though he was right next to his wife trying to assist her.
Are you right there with her?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, I want you to check. Is she awake?
No.
Confronted with this recording, Bill's third and final statement to police was that he thought it would sound better if he had not re-entered the room.
I wish I would have gone back and checked on her instead of chasing him. I thought it would look better if I didn't make it back into the room and Kevin was the only one in the room.
Why would that look better? What do you mean?
I don't know.
When the DNA testing was returned, the blood found inside the room was determined to be Kevin's. It was not clear how it came to be there. Police at the scene found that he had visible cuts on his neck after the struggle with Bill, but he did not re-enter the house after that altercation. DNA testing on the sandal matched Kevin as well. He initially denied to law enforcement that these were his shoes. Bill insisted that he and Diane had purchased them for Kevin a year prior and that he frequently wore them around the house. The eyeglasses were also determined to be Kevin's. Investigators believed that all this placed Kevin inside the room before his mother's death. The son was almost certainly lying.
As I pushed her door open, he grabbed me from the back of the neck and started choking me. And I saw my mom on her back. Her face was absolutely blue.
Did you kill your mother?
No, sir, I did not.
Bill further explained to investigators that Kevin had grown increasingly angry and volatile with his mother, which had culminated in multiple violent incidents. On the day of the murder, the three of them had been arguing over Kevin's use of the computer. A small issue perhaps, but one that was representative of the already embedded animosity in the household. Bill and Diane had wanted 23-year-old Kevin to leave the house and get a job, not to spend all day on the computer. Kevin's behavior had been unstable, but was that enough to lead to murder? Bill's DNA was also found inside the room, and perhaps most crucially, a match of Bill's DNA was found on Diane's neck. Aside from the blood droplets, Kevin's DNA was not found anywhere on his mother. Law enforcement largely disregarded the match to Bill, however, despite its location on the neck. It was not unreasonable, after all, to find the husband's DNA on his wife and in their shared bedroom. But Bill had also failed to be upfront with the investigators. Both men were given polygraph tests. Kevin passed his test without issue. Bill, however, tested as deceptive on 3 questions, 2 of which pertained to Diane's death. The first question that registered as deceptive asked Bill directly if he caused the death of his wife. The second inquired as to whether he had lied to law enforcement about finding Kevin on top of Diane.
I have told you what really happened.
Which version are we supposed to believe? Because you haven't been truthful to us at this point. You see how this is going?
Mm-hmm.
You failed a polygraph. Your DNA is on our neck, his isn't.
As Bill stuck to his story, police were left with little to go on. Polygraphs may serve as a useful indicator of deception, but may just as likely prove false. Investigators turned their attention towards the Kine family history, the dynamic amongst family members, and any potential motive these 2 men may have had for murder. The third question that Bill Kine failed on his polygraph did not directly address Diane's murder, but rather the death of his first wife, Krista. By the year of her death in 2000, Bill and Krista had been married for 22 years. The two were raising 5 children in the same Seminole house where Bill and Diane would later reside with Kevin. At the age of 44, Krista was found drowned in the family swimming pool with what was described as gardening equipment tied around her neck. She was found by her husband, then 42 years old, at 9 a.m. the next morning, a Sunday. Their daughter called 911 while Bill pulled Krista from the pool, but it was too late. She was no longer conscious. It was unclear how long she had been in the water. Investigators determined that Krista had tripped, hit her head, and fell into the pool. Bill was never considered a suspect. The death was deemed a tragic accident. He would tell the examiner in his polygraph that he did not cause the death of his first wife, and the examiner assessed that he was lying. After Krista's death, Bill received a life insurance payout of $250,000. And this was just one of multiple insurance payouts that Bill would receive over the years. It seems that Bill Kine has had some exceptionally bad luck in both his personal life and business ventures. Both Bill's auto shop as well as a separate investment property burnt to the ground, leading to additional insurance funds of undisclosed amounts. In at least one of these cases, the cause was suspected arson, though nothing was ever conclusively proven. Each one of these instances taken individually were deemed unsuspicious, but taken as a whole, these payments were a red flag. When investigators in Diane's murder case looked into her life insurance, they found Bill had taken out policies on her, totaling $750,000. Kevin Kine also had a motive to kill his mother. In fact, he had a history of being argumentative, abusive, and threatening towards Diane, behaviors that were escalating in the months prior to her death. According to witnesses and other family members, including Bill's brother Jeremy, Kevin had a habit of goading his stepfather. "Go ahead, hit me, then I can call the police and you can go to jail," he is quoted as saying. And the police were called to the home, many times. In each instance, the officers would determine that although Kevin had called them out to accuse his stepfather, he was the problem. And Kevin was a problem to both of his parents. Kevin had dropped out of Seminole High School, but later got a high school equivalency. He had been arrested several times starting at age 12 on charges that include battery, marijuana possession, resisting arrest, and criminal mischief. According to Bill, Kevin liked pain pills and the anti-anxiety drug Xanax, and he could become violent. His mother and stepfather entered him into drug treatment, set him up in jobs, and paid for his apartment. In a documented case, Kevin had gotten into an intense argument with his aunt, following which authorities had to arrest him. He kept a job at a neighboring Circle K for months, but most jobs lasted just days or weeks. Without a job, Kevin had no place to stay, except home. 2 years before the murder, the living situation had gotten so bad that Diane had a formal eviction notice served to her son, and with the help of the sheriff's office, he was forced out. But Diane always took him back. It had been a rough time for Kevin. A month prior, he had an operation to remove a benign tumor from his brain. On the day of the murder, he had been resting on the couch as he was still in recovery. This is counter to Bill's recollection of that day. Kevin and Diane had been fighting on and off, while Bill claimed to be watching NASCAR in another room. Kevin had changed the access code to the computer so that no one else could use it. Diane wanted access restored, and she wanted her son out of the house. She had imposed a deadline again, and gave Kevin only a few weeks to leave the house. After a few minutes, when he heard the arguing turn to silence, Bill went to check on Diane. That is when he found Kevin with his hands on his mother's throat. The blood found in the room and on Diane, coupled with Kevin's history of anger issues, was enough to push for an indictment of first-degree murder against him. Speaking to the grand jury, Kevin did himself no favors when he testified that he and his stepfather had a good relationship, with few issues. This was demonstrably false. He was indicted in 2011 and went to trial. Kevin's public defenders strongly suggested that it was his stepfather, Bill Kine, that committed the murder for the life insurance money. But with the motives and stories so directly opposed, it was the physical evidence that weighed most heavily. The prosecution did not offer a logical explanation for the small droplets of Kevin's blood inside the room, but they did contend that this placed him in the room and proved him a liar. The prosecution also pointed towards the sandals that they claimed placed Kevin inside the room, though he denied ever fully entering. In addition, the state of Florida produced a jailhouse informant who claimed that Kevin had admitted to the murder and provided details that they claimed only Kevin could know. The jury found Kevin Kine guilty of second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Jurors stated afterwards that they found no reasonable doubt presented at trial. But 2 years into serving his sentence, Kevin's appeal was heard by the court, and his conviction was overturned. The Second District Court of Appeals in Florida found that it was unlawful to have allowed evidence of Kevin's prior alleged violent or provocative incidents with his stepfather as evidence against him at trial. The state sought to prove a volatile pattern of behavior, and in doing so, they introduced many disputes between Kevin and Bill that had no connection to the anger that Kevin may have felt towards his mother, or the specific circumstances of her murder. The state needed to try again. Kevin Kine's retrial commenced in early 2015. There were a few key differences between Kevin's first and second trial. First, of course, Kevin's history of angry disputes with Bill was omitted. Second, the defense team did not just suggest that Bill Kine was responsible for Diane's death, they outright accused him of it.
Bill Kine has lied over and over and over again. He's lied to save his own skin, he's lied to protect himself, he's lied to set up my client for murder, and the state expects you to convict Kevin based on that man's word.
The third and perhaps crucial difference in this trial compared to the first was that Kevin chose to take the stand in his own defense. When he did so, the prosecution grilled him about his past behavior. He had been a brat at the age of 23. He admitted to acting immaturely. He had been rude and regularly acting out against his mother. He also admitted that his mother was all that he had, so why would he kill her?
That's absolutely bratty.
Okay, and but isn't brat a term that usually applies to children?
That's how I figure I was acting.
Well, you're 23 years old, right?
Correct.
And so you'd agree with me, would you not, that a parent who has a brat who's 8 or 10 years old, okay, would deal with that than a parent that had a 23-year-old that was still called himself a brat, right?
Correct.
Because you're old enough to be out of the house, correct?
Yes, sir.
If your kids are a brat when they're 8 or 10, you just got to live with it pretty much, don't you?
That's correct.
Okay, your mother did not have to live with your behavior, did she?
She didn't have to, no.
But she had no choice because you wouldn't leave, right?
I was given a date.
Well, you've been given a date on a number of occasions, hadn't you?
They kept letting me come back because I had nowhere to go.
Well, you just kept arguing with him. You didn't want to get out of the house, did you?
I just wanted somewhere to stay.
When you opened the door, did you take any steps into the bedroom?
I might have took 1 or 2 steps just opening the door.
This taking 1 or 2 steps, this is the first time you've said that in 4.5 years, right?
I was always saying that I've opened the door, and that's as far as I've went.
You were always saying you never went in the bedroom, right?
The second jury found the reasonable doubt that the first had not, and Kevin Kine, supported by his paternal grandmother Phyllis Karakesh, was found not guilty and released from custody after years of imprisonment.
In the state of Florida versus Kevin Lee Kine, in a charge of murder in the 2nd degree, the defendant is found not guilty.
Did you kill your mother?
No, sir, I did not.
For the first time ever, Kevin Kyne answers that question as a free man.
Feels great. It's been a long journey.
Bill Kine was in court with his new wife to hear the verdict, which delivered a blow to him in more ways than one.
But I feel comfortable sitting here, and I feel comfortable when I go to my grave that I didn't make a mistake.
Geiger says he and the other jurors would have liked to have heard testimony about the death of Bill Kyne's first wife in that same home.
Bill Kine has been cleared in the death of both of his wives. He later remarried a woman named Tanya, who passed away of cancer in 2017. Bill published an autobiography the following year detailing his many losses. It's entitled Love That Lasts a Lifetime. The book description reads, "Through candid anecdotes and inspirational advice, Kine invites all of us to see how with hope, love, and faith, we too can reach the highest mountaintops and survive the deepest valleys of despair." The following year, Bill was charged with leaving the scene of an accident after he drove his motorcycle through a group of cyclists, sending one individual to intensive care. It is not just Bill that found himself caught up again with the law in the years after the second trial. Kevin, who reverted back to his birth name Karakesh, was arrested again in 2016 on a felony battery charge in relation to a fight in a pool hall. It was reported that he struck a man with a triangle rack as part of a brawl at a Seminole pub. The murder of Diane Kyne remains unsolved. Her son and husband continue to call the other a murderer, and there is no doubt that one of them is correct. The Pinellas Pasco State Attorney's Office has stated publicly they were confident that they put the right Kyne on trial. Thanks for watching. I'm Kevin. This is Just Thought Lounge, and I'll see you in the next one.